Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. The ship moved slowly through the darkness of space, far from Earth and the safety of human territory. Jake had been in command for 3 years, but he still felt proud every time he looked at his crew working at their stations. "Admiral, we have contacts on long-range sensors," said Lieutenant Kate Murphy from the communication station. Her voice was calm, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. 12 ships approaching from Sector 7. Jake walked over to Commander Ryan Kelly at the tactical station. "What do you see, Ryan?" Ryan's fingers moved quickly over his control panel. The main screen changed to show a tactical display with 12 red dots moving toward them. "They're big, Admiral, really big. Each one is at least 3 times our size." Captain Lisa Brooks looked up from her weapons console. "Admiral, those are not human ships. The computer is identifying them as Zephyrian, Karathi, Vextari, and Hegemony. Vessels." Jake felt his stomach tighten. 4 different alien species working together meant serious trouble. The Defiance was alone, hundreds of light years from the nearest human fleet. He had hoped their patrol mission would be quiet, but it seemed the galaxy had other plans. "Put them on screen," Jake ordered. The main display changed to show the approaching fleet. The alien ships were massive, dark shapes against the stars. Each one looked like a floating city, covered in weapon ports and armor plating. Their hulls gleamed with energy shields that made them look like they were wrapped in blue fire. "My God," whispered Amy Watson, the youngest member of the bridge crew. "They're huge." Jake had to agree. The Defiance was a good ship, but it looked like a toy compared to these monsters. The human vessel was only 400 meters long, while the alien dreadnoughts stretched over 1 kilometer each. The humans had always known they were outnumbered in the galaxy, but seeing it like this made it real. "Incoming transmission," Kate announced. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it through," Jake said. The screen filled with the image of an alien face. The creature had purple skin, 4 eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, its voice was deep and full of anger. "Human vessel, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. You are trespassing in space that now belongs to the Galactic Coalition. Your species has been judged primitive and unworthy of membership in civilized society." Jake stepped forward. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison of the United Earth Navy. We are in neutral space, conducting a peaceful patrol. We have no wish for conflict." The alien admiral laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Peaceful? Your species knows only war and destruction. We have studied your history, human. You fight among yourselves like wild animals. You poison your own world and kill your own kind for resources." "That's in our past," Jake replied. "We've learned from our mistakes." "Have you?" Kethvar's 4 eyes glowed with hatred. "Your ship carries weapons. Your species builds warships and sends them to patrol space that does not belong to you. You are exactly what we expected: violent, aggressive, and dangerous." Behind Jake, the bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Chief Engineer Pete Collins appeared at his elbow. "Admiral, the alien fleet is maintaining a distance of 50 kilometers. They're not moving to attack position yet." Jake nodded, but kept his attention on the screen. "Admiral Kethvar, we don't want to fight. There's no reason for conflict between our species." "There is every reason," the alien commander snarled. "Your species is a threat to galactic peace. You multiply like insects and consume everything in your path. You must be stopped before you spread further." "And if we refuse?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then you will be destroyed. Look at your pathetic vessel, human. One of my ships could crush it without effort. You have 12 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy facing you. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Your weapons are primitive. Your armor is worthless. The other aliens on Kethfar's bridge could be seen in the background, all of them different species, but all looking at the humans with the same mixture of disgust and contempt. Jake had seen that look before, in the early days of human space. Exploration when they first encountered other species. You have 1 hour to abandon this territory, Kethvar continued. Leave now, and we will let you run back to your little world. Stay, and we will demonstrate why the galaxy fears the Coalition. Fleet. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. These were good people, trained professionals, who had volunteered to serve far from home. They deserved better than to die in an impossible battle. Options? Jake asked. Ryan checked his displays. We can't outrun them, Admiral. Their ships are faster than ours. We can't hide. They already have us locked on sensors. And we can't fight them, not conventionally. Lisa spoke up from her station. Admiral, we do have one option. The special weapon. Jake nodded slowly. He had hoped never to use it, but the situation was becoming impossible. The Defiance looked like an ordinary frigate, but it carried humanity's most advanced technology. The other species of the galaxy thought humans were primitive, but they had never seen what human scientists could do when they really tried. How long do we have? Jake asked. Kate checked her instruments. 58 minutes until their deadline, Admiral. But I'm reading energy buildups on their weapon systems. They might not wait that long. Jake made his decision. All hands, this is the Admiral. Prepare for battle stations. We're not running away. Signal the fleet. Tell them we're about to show these aliens what humans can really do. The bridge crew sprang into action. Warning lights flashed red as the ship prepared for combat. Jake looked at the alien fleet on the screen and smiled grimly. They thought the Defiance was weak because it was small. They were about to learn that size wasn't everything. The battle was about to begin. Amy Watson walked quickly through the corridors of the Defiance, her hands shaking slightly as she carried the coffee to the bridge crew. The ship felt different now that they were at battle stations. The lights were dimmer, and there was a constant hum in the air that made her skin tingle. She stopped at the engineering section, where Chief Engineer Pete Collins was working at a massive control panel. The engineering bay was usually clean and organized, but now it looked like organized chaos. Cables had been pulled out of walls, and strange devices were being connected to the ship's main power systems. Mr. Collins? Amy asked quietly. What's happening down here? Pete looked up from his work. His face was covered in sweat, and his usually neat uniform was stained with grease. We're getting ready to use the big gun, kid. The weapon that makes this ship special. I don't understand, Amy said. This is just a frigate. We only have basic weapons. Pete laughed, but there was no humor in it. That's what we want everyone to think. But the Defiance isn't what it appears to be. Come here, let me show you something. He led her to a sealed door that Amy had never seen opened. Pete pressed his hand against a scanner, and the door slid back to reveal a room filled with equipment. Unlike anything Amy had ever seen. Strange crystals glowed with their own light, and machines hummed with barely contained energy. This is the real heart of the ship, Pete explained. Everything else is just for show. The Defiance was built around this weapon system. It took the best scientists on Earth 5 years to design it, and another 3 years to build it. Amy stared at the machines. They didn't look like any human technology she knew. Some of the components seemed to bend light around them, and others appeared to be made of materials that shifted color as she watched. Is it alien technology? She asked. Some of it, Pete admitted. We've been studying captured alien equipment for 20 years. But the real breakthrough came when Dr. Helen Carter figured out how to combine it with human physics. The aliens think we're primitive because we don't follow their rules. But that's exactly what makes us dangerous. On the bridge, Dr. Carter was explaining the same thing to Commander Kelly. The chief science officer was a small woman with gray hair and intense green eyes. She spoke quickly, her hands moving as she described complex scientific principles. The aliens all use the same basic approach to weapons, she said. They focus on raw power, bigger guns, more energy, thicker armor. It's like an arms race where everyone tries to build the biggest sword. Ryan nodded, though he didn't fully understand. And we do something different? Completely different. Human scientists have always been good at finding new ways to solve old problems. Instead of building a bigger sword, we built a weapon that cuts through reality itself. In the weapons bay, Captain Lisa Brooks was running through final checks. On the quantum cascade cannon, the weapon didn't look impressive from the outside, just a long tube that ran through the center of the ship. But Lisa knew that looks could be deceiving. Lieutenant Tom Garcia, her assistant, was nervous. "Captain, are you sure this thing will work? We've only tested it once, and that was just a small-scale version." Lisa smiled grimly. "Tom, this weapon is based on principles that the aliens don't even know exist. They think reality follows their rules, but humans have always been good at breaking rules." She showed him the weapon's control panel. It was surprisingly simple, just a few buttons and displays. The quantum cascade cannon doesn't fire energy or projectiles. It fires a chain reaction that breaks the bonds between atoms. Once it starts, it spreads from ship to ship through their own defensive systems. "How is that possible?" Tom asked. "The aliens connect all their ships together with quantum communication networks," Lisa explained. "They think it makes them stronger. Instant communication, shared shields, coordinated attacks. But it also makes them vulnerable. If we can start a cascade reaction in one ship, it will spread to all of them." In the Marine Bay, Sergeant Mike Johnson was preparing his troops for the possibility of boarding actions. The Marines were checking their weapons and armor, but Mike knew they probably wouldn't be needed. This battle would be decided by the ship's main weapon, not by soldiers with rifles. "Sarge," called Private Danny Clark, "what's this special weapon everyone's talking about?" Mike strapped on his sidearm. "It's something the scientists cooked up. I don't understand the details, but I know it's powerful enough to level a city. The Admiral is betting everything on one shot." Back in engineering, Pete was making final adjustments to the power systems. The quantum cascade cannon needed enormous amounts of energy to function, more than the ship's normal reactor could provide. But the Defiance had been built with a special power core that could overload safely for short periods. "Amy, I need you to understand something," Pete said as he worked. "When we fire this weapon, every system on the ship will be affected. The lights will go out, gravity will fluctuate, and the air recycling will stop. We'll have maybe 10 minutes of life support after we fire." "What if we miss?" Amy asked. "Then we die," Pete said simply. "The weapon takes everything we have. If it doesn't work, we won't have power for shields, engines, or life support. It's all or nothing." On the bridge, Admiral Morrison was receiving reports from all departments. The alien fleet was still holding position, but their weapons were charging. The deadline was approaching, and Kethvar was clearly losing patience. "Admiral," Kate reported, "the aliens are broadcasting again. They're demanding an immediate response." "Put them through," Jake ordered. Kethvar's face appeared on the screen again. "Your time is running out, human. I am being generous by giving you this chance to flee. My commanders think I should simply destroy you now." "We're not going anywhere," Jake replied. "This is neutral space, and we have as much right to be here as you do." "Rights?" Kethvar laughed. "You speak of rights?" You are insects compared to us. Your entire species could be eliminated by a single one of my ships. You have no weapons that can penetrate our shields, no armor that can stop our guns. You are nothing." Jake looked around his bridge. His crew was ready, working calmly at their stations despite the impossible odds. These people had volunteered to serve on the frontier, knowing they might never see home again. They deserved better than to be dismissed as insects. "Maybe you're right," Jake said. "Maybe we are just insects. But insects can be very dangerous when they're cornered." The transmission ended, and Jake turned to his crew. "Status report." "Quantum cascade cannon is ready," Lisa reported. "All power systems are nominal. We can fire on your command." "Engineering." "Ready," Pete called through the comm system. "Reactor is building to critical levels. We'll have one shot, Admiral." Dr. Carter looked up from her science station. "Admiral, the alien fleet is moving into attack formation. They're positioning themselves in a pattern that will maximize their firepower while protecting their command ships." Jake nodded. "The aliens were being careful, as they should be. They had overwhelming superiority in numbers and firepower. They could afford to be cautious, but they didn't know what they were really facing. The Defiance looked like a simple frigate, but it was actually humanity's most advanced warship. The quantum cascade cannon was a weapon that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. All stations, prepare for combat, Jake ordered. We're about to show these aliens what humans can do when they stop playing by the rules. The battle was about to begin, and the fate of humanity hung in the balance. The alien fleet moved like a pack of predators closing in on wounded prey. Admiral Kethfer watched from his command ship as the 12 massive vessels formed a perfect attack formation. Each ship was positioned to maximize damage while minimizing risk to the others. "Human vessel is maintaining position," reported his tactical officer. "They show no signs of attempting to flee." Kethfer's 4 eyes glowed with satisfaction. "Foolish creatures. Their pride will be their destruction. Signal all ships. Maintain 50-kilometer distance. We will demonstrate our power before we destroy them." The Zephyrian admiral had fought many battles in his long career. He had seen countless enemy ships try to fight against impossible odds. They always made the same mistake. They panicked and wasted their limited resources on desperate attacks that accomplished nothing. "Admiral," called his weapons officer, "all ships report ready to fire. Plasma cannons are charged, particle beams are online, and missile tubes are loaded." "Excellent," Kethfer replied. "But remember, we want to disable their ship, not destroy it. I want to study their primitive technology before we eliminate them." On the bridge of the Defiance, tension filled the air like electricity. Every crew member knew they were facing certain death, but none of them showed fear. They had trained for this moment, and they were ready. "Alien fleet is in position," Ryan reported from his tactical station. "They're keeping their distance." "Just like we expected." Admiral Morrison nodded. The aliens were being smart, staying far enough away to avoid any surprise attacks, but close enough to use their superior firepower. It was exactly what he would have done in their position. "Time to weapons ready?" Jake asked. Lisa checked her displays. 3 minutes and counting, Admiral. The power buildup is on schedule." In the engineering section, Pete Collins watched the reactor readouts with growing concern. The quantum cascade cannon needed enormous amounts of energy, and the ship's power core was being pushed beyond its normal limits. Warning lights flashed red as the reactor temperature climbed toward dangerous levels. "Amy, I need you to monitor the cooling systems," Pete called to his assistant. "If the temperature goes too high, we'll have a meltdown instead of a controlled overload." Amy's hands flew over the control panel. She had never done anything this important before, but she was determined not to let the crew down. "Cooling systems," Are holding steady, Mr. Collins. Temperature is rising, but still in the safe zone. Good girl. Just keep watching those numbers. On the bridge, Dr. Carter was making final adjustments to the quantum cascade targeting system. The weapon was unlike anything ever built before. It didn't target physical objects, but rather the quantum signatures of matter itself. Admiral, the alien ships are using quantum entanglement for their communications and shield systems, she reported. Once our weapon locks onto one ship, it will automatically spread to all connected vessels. How long will the cascade effect take? Jake asked. 30 seconds from first contact to complete fleet destruction, Dr. Carter replied. The quantum bonds will break down faster than their computers can compensate. Lieutenant Tom Garcia was nervous as he watched the alien fleet on his display. Captain Brooks, what if their shields can stop our weapon? Lisa smiled grimly. Tom, conventional shields work by deflecting or absorbing energy. Our weapon doesn't use energy. It uses quantum mechanics. Their shields won't even recognize it as an attack until it's too late. The alien fleet suddenly came alive with activity. Weapon ports opened along the sides of the massive ships, revealing rows of plasma cannons and particle beam projectors. The space around the fleet began to glow with barely contained energy. They're charging weapons, Ryan announced. All 12 ships are powering up their main guns. Jake felt sweat on his forehead. The aliens were getting ready to attack, and the Defiance wasn't ready to fire yet. How much longer, Lisa? 2 minutes, Admiral. The reactor is still building power. We don't have 2 minutes, Jake replied. They're going to fire any second now. On the Zephyrian command ship, Admiral Kethvar was losing patience. The human vessel was just sitting there, making no attempt to flee or fight. It was almost insulting. Perhaps they are trying to surrender, suggested his tactical officer. Humans don't surrender, Kethvar replied. They fight until they die. It's what makes them dangerous, despite their primitive technology. The Admiral stared at the human ship on his screen. It was so small compared to his fleet, barely visible among the stars. But something bothered him about the way it was just sitting there, waiting. Scan their ship again, he ordered. I want to know what they're doing. The science officer worked at his console for several minutes. Admiral, I'm reading unusual energy patterns from their vessel. Their reactor is operating at 150% of normal capacity. Kethvar's eyes narrowed. They're overloading their power core. Are they planning to ram us? Negative, Admiral. They're too far away, and their engines are not engaged. The energy is being directed to something else. Before Kethvar could respond, alarms began sounding throughout his ship. Admiral, the human vessel is broadcasting on all frequencies. They're sending a message. Put it through, Kethvar ordered. Admiral Morrison's face appeared on the screen. Behind him, the bridge of the Defiance was dimly lit, with crew members working frantically at their stations. Admiral Kethvar, this is your final warning. Withdraw your fleet immediately, or we will be forced to defend ourselves. Kethvar laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Defend yourselves? With what? You have one small ship against 12 of the most powerful vessels in the galaxy. You cannot possibly win. Maybe not, Jake replied. But we can make sure you lose too. The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at a blank screen. Something in the human's voice had been different, not fear or desperation, but confidence. It was the voice of someone who knew something important. All ships open fire, Kethvar ordered. Disable their weapons and engines, but don't destroy them. I want to interrogate their crew. The alien fleet erupted in light as hundreds of weapons fired simultaneously. Plasma bolts and particle beams streaked across space toward the tiny human ship. The attack was devastating, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. On the Defiance, the crew braced for impact. The ship's shields flared as the alien weapon struck, but the metamaterial armor held. The vessel shook violently, and several control panels exploded in showers of sparks. "Shields down to 40%, Ryan reported. "Hull integrity holding, but we can't take much more of this." "Admiral," Lisa called urgently, "the weapon is ready to fire. All systems are green." Jake looked at his crew one final time. These brave people had followed him into an impossible battle, trusting in his leadership and their ship's untested technology. Now it was time to see if their faith was justified. "Fire the quantum cascade cannon," he ordered. Lisa pressed the firing button, and the Defiance seemed to hold its breath. Every light on the ship dimmed as the weapon drew power from all systems. The artificial gravity fluctuated, making everyone feel momentarily weightless dot in the engineering section. Pete watched in amazement as the reactor output climbed to levels he had never seen before. "Come on, girl," he whispered to the ship. "Don't let us down now." The quantum cascade cannon fired, sending a beam of distorted space-time toward the alien fleet. The weapon was invisible to normal sensors, but its effects on reality itself were unmistakable. The moment of truth had arrived. In the next few seconds, they would either save humanity or die trying. The quantum cascade cannon, fired with a sound like reality itself, was being torn apart. The weapon drew power from every system on the Defiance, causing the lights to dim and the artificial gravity to fluctuate wildly. Crew members grabbed their stations as the ship shuddered under the massive energy drain. Captain Lisa Brooks watched her weapon displays with intense concentration. The quantum cascade beam was invisible to normal sensors, but her instruments could track its path through space. The beam moved differently than any conventional weapon. It curved around gravitational fields and seemed to bend the fabric of space-time itself. "Firing sequence complete," she announced. "All power has been transferred to the weapon." Admiral Morrison felt his stomach drop as the ship's gravity systems failed completely. He floated above his command chair, watching the alien fleet on the main screen. The massive enemy ships continued to fire their weapons, unaware that death was already racing toward them. "Impact in 15 seconds, Dr. Carter reported from her science station. Her voice was calm, but her hands were shaking as she monitored the quantum cascade's progress. On the Zephyrian command ship, Admiral Kethver was studying the tactical display with growing confusion. His sensors showed no incoming attack from the human vessel, but his science officer was reporting strange readings. "Admiral, I'm detecting unusual quantum fluctuations in space," the science officer reported. "The readings are unlike anything in our database." Kethver's 4 eyes focused on the display. "Are the humans using some kind of cloaking device?" "Negative, Admiral. This is something else entirely. The quantum fluctuations are moving toward our fleet at the speed of light." Before Kethver could respond, the quantum cascade beam struck his flagship. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The beam passed through the ship's shields without triggering any defensive systems. It was as if the weapon didn't exist. Then the cascade effect began. The beam struck the ship's hull and immediately began breaking down the quantum bonds that held the atoms together. The effect started small, just a few molecules in the outer armor plating. But quantum mechanics followed its own rules, and the cascade spread exponentially. "Admiral," the science officer screamed, "the hull is disintegrating. Molecular bonds are breaking down at the quantum level." Kethver watched in horror as his mighty dreadnought began to dissolve. The effect started at the point of impact and spread outward like ripples in a pond. The ship's advanced armor, designed to stop any known weapon, simply ceased to exist as its atomic structure collapsed. "Shields, raise all shields," Kethvar ordered desperately. "Shields are useless, Admiral," the tactical officer replied. "The weapon is attacking the quantum structure of matter itself. Our defenses can't stop it. The cascade effect spread through the ship's hull, reaching the quantum communication array that connected all 12 vessels. The alien fleet had been designed to work together, sharing information and coordinating attacks through quantum entanglement. But now that same system became their doom. The quantum cascade spread from ship to ship through the communication network. Each vessel was quantum entangled with the others, and the cascade effect followed those connections like electricity following a wire. On the second ship, a Kharafi battle cruiser, the crew had only seconds to realize what was happening. The ship's commander watched his screens in disbelief as the quantum cascade reached his vessel through the communication link. All stations, emergency disconnect from the fleet network. He ordered, but it was too late. The cascade had already established a quantum lock on his ship's atomic structure. The massive vessel began to dissolve, its hull breaking down at the molecular level. The third ship, a Vextari destroyer, tried to jump to hyperspace to escape the effect. But the quantum cascade had already touched its hull, and the ship's atomic structure was unraveling faster than its computers could compensate. On the Defiance, the crew watched in amazement as the alien fleet began to disappear. The massive ships that had seemed so threatening just moments before were dissolving like sand castles in the tide. "My God," whispered Amy Watson from her position at the engineering console. "It's actually working." Pete Collins was monitoring the ship's power systems, making sure the reactor didn't overload completely. "The cascade is spreading faster than we calculated," he reported. "It's jumping from ship to ship through their quantum network." Admiral Morrison floated in the zero gravity of the bridge, staring at the tactical display. The red dots representing the alien ships were disappearing one by one as the quantum cascade consumed them. "Time to complete fleet destruction?" he asked. Dr. Carter checked her instruments. 28 seconds, Admiral. The cascade is accelerating as it spreads through their network. On the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar was facing the end of his career and his life. Half his ship had already dissolved, and the cascade was spreading toward the command bridge. His crew was screaming in panic as their reality literally fell apart around them. "Send a distress signal," he ordered. "Warn the homeworld about the human weapon." "Communication systems are down, Admiral." The communications officer replied, "The quantum cascade has destroyed our transmitters." Kethvar's last thought was a grudging respect for the humans he had underestimated. They had seemed so primitive, so weak compared to the advanced civilizations of the galaxy. But they had created a weapon that could destroy matter itself. Cascade effect reached the bridge, and Admiral Kethvar dissolved into his component atoms, along with his ship and his crew. One by one, the 12 ships of the alien fleet ceased to exist. The quantum cascade broke down their hulls, their weapons, their shields, and their crews at the molecular level. In less than 30 seconds, the most powerful fleet in the galaxy was reduced to clouds of elementary particles. On the Defiance, the crew watched in silence as the last alien ship disappeared from their sensors. The space where the massive fleet had been was now empty except for expanding clouds of atomic debris. "Fleet destroyed," Ryan reported quietly. "All enemy vessels eliminated." Admiral Morrison felt the ship's artificial gravity return as the power systems came back online. The quantum cascade cannon had used every bit of energy the Defiance could produce, but it had worked exactly as designed. "Casualties?" he asked. "None, Admiral," Kate reported. "All crew members are accounted for. Minor injuries only." Lisa looked up from her weapons console, her face pale but determined. "Admiral, the weapon performed perfectly." The quantum cascade spread through their entire fleet in 28 seconds, exactly as Dr. Carter predicted. Pete's voice came through the CUM system from engineering. "Admiral, we're running on backup power, but all systems are coming back online. The reactor is stable, and we should have full power restored in 10 minutes. Jake looked around his bridge at the crew that had just changed the course of galactic history. These brave people had trusted in untested technology and impossible odds. They had faced the most powerful fleet in the galaxy and won. "Signal Earth," he ordered. "Tell them the weapon works. Tell them the galaxy is about to get a lot more interesting." The age of human weakness was over. The aliens would never underestimate humanity again. The news of the battle spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Within hours, every major species had received reports of the impossible victory. The human ship that had faced 12 of the most powerful vessels in the galaxy and won in less than 30 seconds. On Earth, President Sarah Mitchell sat in the emergency council chamber, staring at the holographic display that showed the battle site. Where the alien fleet had been, there was now only empty space and clouds of atomic particles. "Are you absolutely certain about this report?" she asked General Robert Hayes, head of Earth's military forces. "Confirmed by 3 independent sources, Madam President," the general replied. "The Defiance destroyed the entire coalition fleet with a single weapon discharge. Admiral Morrison is requesting orders." Sarah looked around the room at her advisors. For 20 years, humanity had been the underdog in galactic politics. They had been ignored, dismissed, and treated as primitives by the advanced alien civilizations. Now everything had changed. "What's the status of alien forces near our territory?" she asked. "Retreating, ma'am," reported Intelligence Director Karen White. 7 alien fleets that were moving toward human space have reversed course. The hegemony has recalled all their ships to defensive positions. Meanwhile, on the Galactic Council station, Ambassador Ellen Price was experiencing a very different reception than usual. The massive space station orbited a neutral star system and served as the diplomatic center for dozens of species. Ellen had visited many times before, usually to be lectured about humanity's aggressive tendencies. Now, as she walked through the station's corridors, other ambassadors stepped aside and whispered among themselves. The Korathi representative, who had once called humans violent primitives, now bowed respectfully as she passed. "Ambassador Price," called a voice behind her. She turned to see Ambassador Victor of the Zephyrian Empire. His purple skin was pale, and his 4 eyes showed fear instead of their usual arrogance. "Ambassador Vector," Ellen replied calmly, "I trust you've heard about the recent incident, the destruction of Admiral Kethver's fleet?" "Yes, we've heard." Vector's voice was barely above a whisper. "Ambassador, my government wishes to open formal diplomatic relations with humanity. We believe there may have been ... misunderstandings ... In the past," Ellen smiled politely. "I'm sure there were. Perhaps we can discuss it at the emergency council session." The emergency session was unlike any in the council's history. The great chamber was filled with representatives from 47 species, all of them talking in hushed tones about the human weapon. Ambassador Price took her seat at the human delegation table and waited for the session to begin. Council Speaker Zarthul, an ancient creature from the ethereal collective, called the session to order. "We are gathered to discuss the recent military action that resulted in the destruction of a coalition fleet. Ambassador Price, the council requires an explanation." Ellen stood and activated her holographic display. The USS Defiance was conducting a routine patrol in neutral space when it was confronted by 12 warships from 4 different species. The alien commander, Admiral Kethver, demanded that humanity abandon its territory and threatened to destroy any human vessels that remained. Murmurs filled the chamber. The Zephyrian ambassador looked uncomfortable as Ellen continued. The Defiance attempted to negotiate, but the alien fleet opened fire. Faced with destruction, the human ship defended itself using its onboard weapon systems. The result was the complete destruction of the attacking fleet. With one shot, added the Korathi. Representative, your ship destroyed 12 of our most advanced vessels with a single weapon discharge. How is this possible? Ellen smiled. Human scientists have always been good at finding creative solutions to complex problems. We approached the challenge of space combat differently than other species. On the Defiance, Admiral Morrison was receiving reports from across human space. The ship's communication array was working overtime as messages poured in from Earth, the colonies, and other human vessels. Admiral, Kate reported, we're getting requests for technical data on the quantum cascade weapon from 15 different species. The hegemony is offering a formal alliance. The Vextari want to establish trade agreements. Dr. Carter looked up from her science station. Admiral, I'm also receiving requests from universities and research institutes across the galaxy. Everyone wants to understand how the weapon works. Jake smiled. What are we telling them? That the information is classified, Admiral, Dr. Carter replied. But I think the galaxy has learned an important lesson about underestimating human ingenuity. In the ship's engineering section, Pete Collins was working with Amy Watson to restore full power to all systems. The quantum cascade cannon had pushed the Defiance to its limits, but the ship had performed perfectly. Mr. Collins, Amy asked, what happens now? Will other species try to build weapons like ours? Pete wiped grease from his hands and considered the question. They can try, Amy, but they don't think like we do. They follow rules and traditions that have worked for thousands of years. Humans break rules and try new things. That's what makes us dangerous. And that's what makes us human, Amy added with a smile. Back on the Galactic Council station, the emergency session was reaching its conclusion. Ambassador Price had answered dozens of questions about the battle, always carefully avoiding any details about how the weapon actually worked. The Council recognizes, Speaker Zarthul announced, that humanity acted in self-defense against an unprovoked attack. However, the power demonstrated by human weapons technology has ... implications. For galactic security, what kind of implications? Ellen asked. The ancient speaker's translucent form flickered with uncertainty. For 2,000 years, the balance of power in this galaxy has been stable. No single species has possessed weapons capable of destroying entire fleets with one shot. Your technology changes everything. Ellen stood to address the full council. Speaker Zarthul, members of the council, humanity has no desire to threaten galactic peace. We have always preferred diplomacy to warfare, but we will defend ourselves when attacked. And you have proven that you can do so most effectively, added the Korathi ambassador. The question now is whether other species can trust humanity with such power. The same question could be asked about any species, Ellen replied. The difference is that humanity has always been honest about our capabilities. We don't hide behind arrogance or false superiority. We are what we are, a young species trying to find our place in the galaxy. On Earth, President Mitchell was meeting with her military commanders to discuss the implications of the victory. The quantum cascade weapon had worked perfectly, but it also meant that humanity was now a major power, whether they wanted to be or not. Madam President, General Hayes reported, we're receiving communication requests from every major government in the galaxy. Everyone wants to know our intentions. What are our intentions, General? Sarah asked. The same as they've always been, ma'am. Peace, prosperity, and the right to exist without being threatened by those who consider us inferior. Intelligence. Director White added her assessment. The balance of power has shifted dramatically, Madam President. Before this battle, humanity was considered a minor threat at best. Now we're seen as the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Dangerous to those who threaten us, Sarah corrected. We've never started a war, Karen. We've only finished them. Back on the Defiance, Admiral Morrison received a priority message from Earth Command. The orders were simple. Return to Earth immediately for debriefing and assignment to a new mission. Set course for Earth, Commander Kelly, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. As the ship jumped into hyperspace, Jake reflected on what had happened. The Defiance had been sent on a routine patrol mission and had ended up changing the course of galactic history. The crew had performed magnificently under impossible pressure. Admiral, Lisa said from her weapons station, I've been thinking about what happened today. Do you think the other species will try to develop similar weapons? They'll try, Jake replied. But Dr. Carter is right. They don't think like we do. They'll try to improve on their existing technology instead of creating something completely new. Lieutenant Tom Garcia looked up from his console. Admiral, what makes human technology so different from alien technology? Jake considered the question carefully. Alien species develop technology by building on what came before. They improve and refine, but they rarely make revolutionary breakthroughs. Humans are different. We look at a problem and ask, what if we tried something completely different? Dr. Carter nodded in agreement. The quantum cascade weapon is a perfect example. Alien species focused on making more powerful conventional weapons. We asked, what if we attack the structure of matter itself? It's a fundamentally different approach. As the Defiance traveled through hyperspace toward Earth, news of the battle continued to spread. On the Hegemony homeworld, military leaders were holding emergency meetings to discuss the implications of human weapons technology. How do we defend against a weapon that ignores shields and armor? Asked General Turval. We can't, replied Science Minister Yelanara. The humans have created something that operates outside our understanding of physics. Our only option is to ensure they never have reason to use